Time. Okay, so we are recording to the cloud. All right, everyone, thanks for joining. Today is the November 24th iteration of the Microprofile live Hangout. One of these days, I'm going to do the studio audience clapping. But anyway, a link to the meeting minutes is in the notes. If you were on the call, please click on the link and add yourself as a contributor to this meeting, as many of you already are. I am going to share my screen. This meeting is being recorded. It'll be uploaded to YouTube along with the chat. So they'll both be up there. Let's see here. Let me change this to 125%. And then I am going to start the share. Once I find the right browser, here we go. All right, so what I've done is we don't have a whole lot of folks adding items. What I did do is, it's obviously we're going to be focused on the release. Martin he's up first. And then I've also added kind of to get a status on some of these things, some of the specs. All of these have microprofile working group issues, right? So I thought I'd just get a status on those. And then maybe we can also get a status of anything else that's not, that doesn't yet have an issue. Okay, with that in mind, Martin, take it away.
Thanks. So I just really quickly want to give my insights on the release process since I went through it last week. Basically, it was really easy to follow everything bureaucracy needed for release of the individual specs. So great job, Emily and Roberto. And I don't know who else was involved. John, if you can click that first link in the second bullet. What issues I run into is basically that I cannot change labels in microprofile-wg working group GitHub repository, and I'm not sure if this is intended. Only steering committee should have push rights to this repository, but it seems a little too much to ask for change of labels when I'm linking PMC approval, for instance. So this is just a general question if we should have push rights to this repository or not.
I actually think there is like a bigger question over here, which I even discussed with Emily, which is, shouldn't this repo be in the Eclipse organization? Why do you have it in a different organization? I know that this was like the original one before moving to Eclipse, but shouldn't this go into Eclipse as well?
Right. So it's actually Kevin. I talked with Kevin. Well, he was in last week. So it's we only talk about microprofile working group. This repository. So this repository, he said, this is intended for the corporate members. So basically, it's all these John, Roberto, me, Kevin, and David, Amelia, Titiana, and also Vincent, Samar, etc. So they have the kind of the access right to be able to add labels and etc. So, but I am not 100% about this org. It's under microprofile and also microprofile-org.
Well, even if we want to control the authorizations or the permissions on the repository, that doesn't explain why it's on a different organization, because it could still be at the Eclipse and still be with different roles or different permissions per member, right? I just find that it might be confusing to have some projects or most of the projects are on the Eclipse organization, then this one is on a different one. It even confused people, because if you go and look for microprofile, you'll find the organization microprofile, then you don't see there is not that many things over there, so it kind of looks like a dead project, right?
Well, I
So
think, and I don't know, I'll be honest, I don't want to dig into this conversation too deep. I mainly want to get a status.
yeah,
And if this is holding us from going forward, then we can have the conversation. But if it's not holding us from going forward, I'd like to pause this because there is a broader conversation, I think, about are we going to move the specs over, right? Because if you look at the specs, in Jakarta, for instance, they also do not exist under the Eclipse top level organization. It's under a Jakarta EE top level organization, right?
yeah,
In a specifications repo. So it's a broader conversation. And what I'm hoping to do is, kind of suffer through this right now so that we can kind of just have forward movement on the specs in question.
yeah,
Sure.
I agree. We should revisit after 4.0 is out.
I'm fine if I find if the specs move here or this one moves to Eclipse, it's just find it's confusing that there are like split repos on split organizations. That's all.
Yeah, I think we'd like to. Well, I don't even know. I mean, personally, I'd like to have them all under one. I don't want to make a blanket statement for everybody.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I want as well.
Yeah. Okay, so Martin, beyond
Take
this,
this later. If you can go back into minutes and click another link, third bullet point. Basically, Wayne from Eclipse reminded me that we still had November 10th as a target release date in health release plan. And since then, most of the specs have been updated, but I just wonder what should be the release date in the release plan. Should it be the end of the ballot or something that we decide on, or what should I put there?
I think what you put here is good enough. Actually, I will have a more conversation along the similar line, so we can discuss a little bit more. So it's because Win added a little bit more comments on the config, the Bugzilla. So basically, this review will finish once the ballot finish. So hopefully is kind of we can achieve this. Like we can use the config exam as an example. I think good job, Titiana is here, and then hopefully by this Friday we can even exit a ballot for a microprofile config. So hopefully a similar thing will happen for health. By the way, I think this is a good time to bring it up for the ballot for health. I voted for IBM, so Vincent or Summer need to vote for AJAG and also Titiana, and for the Gelastic, and also I think it's I don't know. Roberto added a +1 already for the GitHub. So
well, that was not the
vote.
not like a binding vote in the sense that because that needs to be casted on the email, right? But it was mostly to indicate that it was ready because we discussed it to be that as we should go and review the release, right? And before actually being submitted.
No, I think it's sorry to interrupt. I think it's and then we discussed a little bit more. Is that if we elect a mentor, so we don't do that review anymore. So that's what a mentor for.
Okay, that's fine. Anyway, I was thinking that we were still doing the review before pushing the release forward, and my +1 was
okay.
With that in mind, was not like to be like a binding vote because binding vote is just only on the email, right?
Okay, in that case, we need a binding vote from all the rest of 4 members.
Sure. What's the subject line on that email thread to +1 it on?
Yeah, it's a maybe it's a kind of there's on the microprofile-wg. So So John, can you go to the microprofile-wg mailing list? You can see the, yeah. Yeah, so this one is
Release
right.
review, vote by December 7th. All right, cool. Ballot. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay, to clarify something, so once we have all the casting votes on all the binding members over there, are we able to close the ballot? Or because there was that discussion about like 1 week, 2 weeks, and I always get confused.
7 days minimum.
Yeah, 7 days minimum. Even if all the casting, even if all the binding votes have been casted.
That is correct.
Yeah.
That is according to the Eclipse specification process.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
this is the reason why we have December 2nd in the release plan and not December 7th, which I see here in the email thread, right? Because we can end it after 7 days.
Yeah. So this is a job dead date because Kevin and Amelia came up with the kind of the email template, said, okay, go with a longer time. But we encourage people to vote earlier.
Okay, thanks. This
So
didn't make sense to me.
another thing about the votes is there is no elected community representative, right? So there is no vote there is no binding vote from the community at this stage, right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
So for the ballot to pass, we got to have 2/3, if I remember correctly. So we got to have 4 of the 5 corporate members.
Just a question out of curiosity, what does need to be reviewed at this stage when for the ballot? Is there some kind of checklist, or is everyone assuming that it is okay and that you just have to put a +1 on that mailing list?
So there's a kind of the all the kind of artifacts will be has been listed on that issue. Basically, you can take a look at the artifact or the API and Java and etc. Try it out if you want, and also JavaDoc have the correct license and etc.
Sorry, I'm looking for the link to the repo. Do we have a link to the repo?
Steve, just scroll a little up.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Scroll a little up.
A link in the download, so up.
Oh, here it is, staging repo. That's what I was looking for.
So it is basically just a check on completeness, or
if you go,
is there any things about? Yeah, Emily says you said about.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Emily, you said about the sign off and things like that, or is that it's just a question out of curiosity. I'm not sure if this is now the time or the place to ask.
No, that's fine. So usually what I on my validation, I do validate all the items in this list to make sure that they are conforming on what's stated over here. And then I also go and validate, for instance, that the spec PDF, the spec HTML have the right licensing, the JavaDoc have the right licensing, the APIs and TCKs are adding the right licensing and the TCK instructions, that there is the reference implementation and is passing the TCK, if the JavaDocs are putting like the right licensing as well. So there are like these bunch of validations that you do, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the important base.
Things.
Yeah, important base is the PDFs, the Eclipse Foundation copyright, and JavaDoc, and etc.
But I mean, there I think there are like two levels of validation. So one is like this legal validation that you do, right? And then nothing stopping you of if you feel that you figure out, I don't know, maybe an issue on the TCK that has a test that you're not able to implement or pass or for whatever reason, right? Then that will have to fail the vote, and you'll say, hey, this TCK test is not possible to implement for whatever reason, so we cannot test this, so we cannot pass this. So
Yeah, but I assume that kind of problem would arise much earlier because you are not going to wait until the vote
Sure,
to see if a
definitely.
test is possible to implement for your implementation.
That's the hope.
Definitely. I mean, the idea is that you all of these APIs and implementation check you do beforehand, but as you know, things are not that linear, and sometimes these things happen. So
yeah, so basically we're +1ing on what's being staged and if everything administrative has been done, right? We are not going to loop back into the contents if there can't be a bug or something. That's all.
well, I mean,
past.
you should, right? Because that's like another level of validation. For instance, if you pick up config, it was mostly me and Emily and Jan that have done the work. So if you just go and blindly vote +1s, means that you just blindly trust all of us three, right? And the idea over here is also you're going to have like a lot of peer review on the release that's being proposed.
Yeah, but that's where the mentor comes in, right? That kind of knows the content of what has been staged, so he can do a more adequate check on if it's all working out or not. Unlike someone that is completely out of the code, like me.
If I can give my 2 cents, I don't think that is that much required to check, because what we did before we had working group was just stage it and release it right away. So still the spec team was only ones that knew what was actually being released, and we found bugs after the release. So I just don't want to waste that much time. If we have 2 weeks, then okay. If you can verify, that's just great, but it shouldn't be the requirement that you need to check what is being included and if there are potential bugs, or that you need to now implement the stage repo or stage API.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's not required, of course, but just saying that might be a good practice.
I agree, but now it's clear to me, and hopefully ready as well. That's what has to be done and why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just vote from your own heart. So whatever you feel like this is convince yourself this is good. Like these are all different levels of confidence, right? So depend on, I mean, are you using it or you just like glimpse it over it to see it's good enough, or you use it in anger and find out, okay, this is seriously flawed or something like that. Just anything.
I couldn't find that in your music.
Oh gosh, no. Sorry.
No, also just to clarify here, so right now we have to vote for this health part, like health review, and also the one till the 4th of September. It seems to me there was like specification review number 9. Am I correct?
Yes. Yeah. So you need to vote both. Hopefully, Titiana or Ruslan. If you vote the other one, microprofile config, we are able to close the ballot this Friday, so we can release config this week, and then this will further speed up the release. Release train.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, no pressure. But however, if you can vote for it, that would be good.
Yeah, I just rechecked that for some reason I was not getting those emails. Maybe Ruslan is getting them.
Oh,
Yeah,
you
I
need
see.
to register. You need to subscribe to this
Yeah,
mailing
it seems to me that I was like subscribing and I get some updates, but for some reason I didn't get the email about the 7th, about the 4th of December I got, but about the 7th not. So maybe there was some glitch in my mail, no problem. So yeah, we will vote for that for sure, not to pause the process.
Great, thank you. Or check your spam folder to see whether it ends up there.
Oh, I already did. No, nothing.
Right.
Okay, so config is up and running, health is up and running. What do we have next? That's on the next phase, or on this phase still, because we still have like, was that like fault tolerance metrics?
Yeah, so I added these. The way I did this is actually I'll just go up here. And I've just seen so far who's created issues.
So I think we haven't quite finished the health yet, right? Have we? And
The health
I can
conversation, you mean?
Yeah, the conversation on the health. Martin, have you finished?
Yeah, I have 2 more points that I want to tackle, but what you are looking for, John, is the last link that has Emily prefixed in the agenda, where you have like individual waves. So we will get to it. Okay, so next thing that I wanted to talk about is that we all staged one more RC. I think that config have even more staged RCs in Sonatype. What should we do with it? Because now I have staged health RC6 and stage health 3.0 final, which are basically the same. Should I release RC6 or should we drop it?
You can leave it. You can either drop it or push it to Maven Central. It's all absolutely fine. If you don't need it to Maven Central, you can drop it.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if RC6 is stages, it means it's not public. So it means that no one is actually using it unless you put the staging repo as a repository dependency. But if someone have done that, they know that since they're using a staging repo, that's not completely final, so that is perfectly fine to go away. So in my opinion, you should just drop it. And if I'm depending on it, which probably is not very likely, they'll just update to 3.0 final, and that's it.
So the issue I see with that is that when you are running release job in CI, it will create a tag. So we have already individual RCs, in my case, 3.0 RC6 tag in GitHub repository. So I can delete that and like act as it wasn't there, but someone can already, you know, like.
But actually,
in the meantime,
in my opinion, I think that it's fine to leave the tags. I mean, they're not harmful in any way. So a tag, so you can create as many tags as you like in GitHub, right? A tag doesn't really mean that you require a release of something. But I get your point. So if you prefer to delete the tag, that's fine as well. But it's not really harmful, so you can just be there, right?
Yeah. So it's a.
I can even delete it if needed.
You cannot delete it, you mean?
Yeah, I can delete it.
Okay.
I'm doing that if release job fails, so we need to do it. So I can just drop it if that's the decision.
Just drop it. Okay, that's fine.
Do whatever you want. So basically.
Yeah, I've deleted them many times when doing a platform release. If something gets foobarred with the platform release, I just go in and delete the tag and delete it out of the repo and then do a rebuild.
Yeah.
So there's a process for that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the process is just do it. I mean, there's no formal documented process, or like Emily mentions. It's just kind of up to whoever's doing the build. If the build doesn't make sense, then I tend to delete it. If the build has a reason, then I can, keep it, I guess.
Yeah,
Clear.
if there's a reason you want to keep it, keep it. If you don't want to keep it, delete it.
And for the future, when we are doing RCs, there is nothing required. I don't need to do any more notifications than just send basically Google group message like we did before. So no need for any approvals or anything similar.
Yeah, our C is just gonna do it like you have done it until now.
So,
Okay.
however,
No
I
worries.
think this depends. If you do another like microprofile 3.1 release, 3.1 RC1, I think it doesn't harm to send a heads up on the Google group so that people is aware you are planning like a health 3.1 RC1. However, if you fix something to do another RC2 or just trying out to do a RC3, in this case, it doesn't make so much sense to send an email.
Oh, no,
However,
sure. What Martin was asking was if we had to follow the process like he did for this one. So yeah, it is fine for you to send a notification to the Google group, but you don't have to go through the entire process of creating that GitHub issue, setting like the release plan, setting up like the TCK compatible implementation, and all that stuff. So we'll just do like Jenkins build, as long as it's not non-final, then you'll just release it like you used to, and that's it.
Yeah, this is exactly what I was asking. Thanks. Yeah. Okay, and the last point is basically already mentioned community voting. I'm not sure if, because I'm counting as a community, because I'm not representing Red Hat, so I guess I should or could vote on that voting thread also, but how much do we want to do this directly in a thread and make noise, especially when the community is growing? Or maybe we can move these as +1s, -1s to the issues or something similar. This was just an idea. Because I wanted to also vote, but I don't want to make just a noise in the voting thread.
Which thread are you talking about? The working group thread?
Yeah, that ballot.
That is strictly, for that ballot thread, that is strictly the primaries or alternates. So yeah, yeah, people should not do a +1 as just, as community members, unless they're the committer member representative, which we don't have right now. Because otherwise it does become noise, I think.
But I'm not. I hope that you're right on that, because, for instance, David said the community to vote, and I think he was referring to the entire community, not just the community representative in one of his email voting threads.
Did we discuss that last week? Was that the outcome from last week?
I can't remember.
No, we didn't
But
cover it
basically
last week. A few.
He said like a sentence saying, reminder, all the community should be voting on the microprofile working group thread.
Yeah, you can vote, but it's not binding. That's what we discussed some calls ago.
Okay, so that was.
But if it's just.
Go ahead.
But if it's just interpreted as noise, then I guess we shouldn't do it. If it, doesn't make sense.
I'll tell you what. Yeah, let's punt on this one, and we'll review it later, because we have a lot of people not here today. I'll tell you, there's times when I look for things, and there is a lot of, because there's a lot of conversations, going back and trying to find things can be difficult. I just want to make sure that it's absolutely clear that the primaries and alternates, +1, I guess. If it's community and committer members, right now it's not a problem. But if we start having 50, 100 people doing +1s, going back through the thread is just kind of a pain, from, how do I say this? If people want to come back and review and see who +1 and stuff, I guess it's a little bit harder. Although, No, we don't have anywhere else where we document that right now, right? That right now is the official place. So like the steering committee meeting, we've had votes and it's very clear. Here's the votes of the committee member or the corporate members, and we've +1 or -1 or 0, right? For the working group votes, I think I'd like it to just to somehow be absolutely clear that, you know, how the primary and alternates voted, right? That's me personally. So maybe we punt on it. I do recall that conversation now that Edwin brings it up.
Right. Maybe the a community vote can happen on the issue instead on the email.
On the issue or a separate thread, right? There's a ballot thread and a community ballot thread.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, we can discuss as a
we can leave this.
feedback session. Something like that.
We can leave this after 4. So
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
everything that I wanted to share. Thanks.
Okay. Emily, I think
Yeah,
you've already
can you
kind
go
of.
to?
Okay.
Yeah, can you click on that link? So basically, I think is this one moved along a lot further. So if you scroll down a little bit, so so basically is we got a PMC +1, and also the IP log has been approved as well. So can you click on the bug issue, that link? Thank you. Can you scroll down a little bit? So basically the IP, can you go down a little bit? So Win put a comment here today, and basically that's approved. So this is great news because the IP log was generated for the whole microprofile repo. So which means all the other kind of spec can use the same IP. So it's this has been approved. The only thing is this on hold is we need a ballot. So because Kevin started the ballot on the 20th, so basically the 27th, which is this Friday, if Gelastic voted within this week, we can close this ballot. So basically it's this weekend or early next week, we can push this microprofile config to GitHub to the Maven Central. That's conclude the microprofile config tool release.
Yeah, I've just sent the votes for both issues. So from Gelastic side, it's already covered.
Well, that's great. So which means, thank you, Titiana. So which means, John, so 27th December, we can exit this ballot. So Kevin is off this week, maybe on Monday, so we can exit this ballot period.
So sorry, I'm looking for the email. Oh, maybe it's not here. You replied to this email thread on config?
Titiana?
I replied to the GitHub issue right there. It seems to me it should automatically send the notification, no?
No,
No,
you're going to
no.
have to reply
Okay.
directly to this email somewhere in your.
Okay, I will find it, no problem.
Okay, yeah, it'll have to be to this email thread.
Okay.
So I have one more question, if I can. If you go into that config spec issue again and into bug issue to Eclipse CI, and scroll down and that last link, which is that IP log. This still mentions, well.
I prefer not to log in right now, I guess, but what does it say?
Okay, well, it still mentioned that it's technology microprofile, but the title also includes config 2.0. So is this for all microprofile or only config?
This is for all because the all under the same project. I will, as I forgot to update it.
Yeah.
I will update the Bugzilla title to say microprofile. standard thing.
But still, this brings like a good point over here, because I thought that IP log was only being generated at the platform level and was not required to be done at each individual, at least even if it's for the entire platform, it was still tied to an individual spec, like config in this particular case. Should spec releases actually have to care about generating the IP log even if it's for entire platform, or should we get handled by John and Kevin when doing the platform release?
Well, it's John, Kevin, Edwin, and Emerson.
Yeah, sorry.
Technically, but well, so right now we're not going to have. We're looking at a platform release. Well, yeah, we're looking at a platform release, right? Sorry, a marketing release. So I think for this time around, the IP log's already been generated. We could probably just apply the one that you see on the screen across all of the specs. It's worth a conversation a little bit later on about how we want to do it. Do we want to do it at the platform spec level? Is it the first one that gets through wins? Right,
Yeah,
is another way of doing it.
But from this exercise, I think is that Eclipse won't be able to approve it before this IP log generated. I think it's for the following releases, even for the microprofile 4.1 or 5. I think maybe the first spec goes through BALLOT, need to have this IP log generated, and all the rest we inherit from it. I don't
So does
think
that mean that basically this here, everyone's already gotten a +1, right? Everyone's basically checked all of these off. Is that true?
Oh, not everyone checks this off. So it's kind of the first one. Basically, you create the release record. The second
which
one
everyone's
is send
done.
email to
Right.
PMC. You all need to do it. Every spec need to do it. The third one, you also need to initiate EMO. Only partial of the third one. Partial
Gotcha
of the
now.
third one, you need to do the IP log.
Yep.
So the first spec release will have the IP log covered for all the rest spec releases.
Yep. Because the EMO needs a week or two heads up before they do their approval.
Yeah, the major thing is EMO. PMC is a really fast turnaround within a couple hours. So EMO is the more concern is IP. That's all EMO, and also EMO check the governance process, basically the release record.
Yep. Okay, so I'm gonna see here, we got roughly 20 minutes left. I'm gonna turn off my video because it's just really slow right now. I don't know if anyone, so we already kind of have health and config covered. Is there anything else on health?
No, we have BALLOT running, so I'm just waiting until it's finished.
Okay, so we hit, yep. Okay, so metrics. I don't know if Don is on or
So
if anyone else
Don-
from the metrics team.
Yeah, Don has a clash. He told me about the status. Basically, he created the release review, and at the moment is trying to get a CCR record up. So he planned to get everything done tomorrow. So he planned to send out the kick off the release process tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he asked me to do the ballot kind of for tomorrow. So that's yeah.
Okay, fault tolerance.
Going to be quick here. Fault tolerance actually is created is kind of draft, trying out the template. So once the config and the metrics are out, and then we can push fault tolerance out. So it's all ready. So however, it's kind of not in the process to kick off the release yet. Ready to be released, but not
Any updated status? So I'm gonna thank you, Emily. Any updated status from any of the other specifications that anyone wants to give?
Jot is waiting for config. But as far as I know, everything is mostly ready. I mean, it's
Okay.
still, I mean, so it still requires the build and create the issue, and but but then they're not going to do that until they have the dependency to update on the project, right?
Right.
And everything else, I think it's on the same wagon, right? So OpenAPI has dependency on config. REST client has dependency on config, and tracing has dependency on config and REST client. So they're kind of stuck until they're kind of basically pretty much all of them are stuck because of config.
Okay. And not a topic for today, but it's a little bit concerning to me that this gets drawn out by our defined process that we're defining. If we want to have 3 releases per year, right? Just to do a release, basically you got to have a month of the 4-month just to start with config and get everybody else released, right? So something for us to think about.
But wasn't it the idea of doing things in parallel? Because config is now in staging, so everyone can point to that staging and creating their artifacts with a final version of 2.0 of config.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing a lot in parallel, but not everything.
The
Right?
only thing is, sorry.
Well,
The
there are like two issues on that. So one, if the release fails for some reason, then everyone's work's going to be down the drain, and I mean it's a risk. Second, yes, you can include the staging repo, but you cannot. But in my opinion, I mean you could release in theory, and I mean it should work, but in the end, once you release on config, the staging repo goes away and even goes to Maven Central. All dependency is still going to work, but then your POM is going to link to a staging repo that does not exist anymore, which is going to be weird.
So I don't necessarily intend to dig too deep down this thread of thought, but it's something that's kind of mentally screaming out at me right now that this is taking some time. So
you're right.
Yeah,
I mean, it's most likely
after
what to do. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so after the 4.0 release, we should kind of do a release review of microprofile 4.0 as a community and just say, okay, where can we optimize?
Yeah,
we can.
probably going to have to define like some timelines in the sense that because what we were doing right now is we have like a deadline and every spec will release in the end, right? So we're probably going to have to make config release like a month before the actual deadline.
Yeah,
Well, and we don't have the platform release probably this time around, right? It's probably just going to be a marketing release. When we do have a platform release, it has to wait for all the other releases to be final.
Yeah.
Right. By the way we're defining things right now. So it literally takes a month to go from config BALLOT to platform release probably. I mean, we'd have to, map it out based on our experience, once we finish, but that's kind of what it's looking like. That means of our 3 months, for 4 months, 1 month is that. And at the front end, we have to have a release plan, right? A more formal release plan. And that's going to be at least a couple of weeks, right? So
the thing is that this is a special release because all the spec is all rushed into the release. Most of the time is just a few spec to do the release. The other thing is in the future, like a config can release using a different schedule. So it's basically the config use a completely different schedule as others.
Well, I mean, that's going to be like it's not a conversation for now. It's going to be like a long conversation.
Yeah.
But maybe an option is we'll just release all the specs at the same time, the same staging repo. That will fix it.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a last thing.
And then you vote on all of them at the same time.
Right. So I have a last atom. So John, if you click the last link here. So here, so it's hopefully like on the 4th December, we can like even earlier than that, we can start the phase 2 and phase 3. So the thing is like we can put the rest client GW for tolerance into the ballot. So I think is it would be good if someone volunteer to be a mentor for this kind of mentor for this like specs. So it's we will have like 5 specs left. Hopefully, I think it's if it's we all vote in time within 1 week, I think it's even before 20th December, we can get the spec out. So that leaves another question of mine is for the microprofile 4.0. So what are we going to do with it? Are we going to run a ballot, or are we going to direct it to release it?
So you're talking about the platform release?
Yes.
Assuming it's a marketing release, there's really not a lot. I don't think we have to run a ballot. We can do it to do it, you know, to kind of do a dry run for what it might be for the, you know, version after 4.0. But the way we've been doing it basically is, you know, historically the way we've been doing the component specs too, right? So there's not, how do I say this? We already have a milestone release out there, or candidate release out there, right? So we should, you know, if everyone takes a look at that, you know, ahead of time, you'll kind of see what's already there. I don't know if we have to do a formal ballot, but we can. It's just going to push things out, and it might push it out then past the end of the year, which I'd prefer not to do.
Yeah, I think it makes sense just directly like update the inclusion version. I think it's in this case, like within 1 day we can turn around, like for just to say, if like in the week of 20th December, we get everything out. And when we release the last spec, we directly release the 4.0. So in this case, I think it's very, very possible we can get the 4.0 out before Christmas.
So if we put just 4.0 out and with or without a ballot, what is then the difference for the users, for the other implementations that want to use it? Is it possible? Is it not possible? Because what brings the ballot on top of just putting the 4.0 POM out?
So so the platform spec right now, there's no specific, well, that I can think of, there's no IP in there, right? Right now, all the IP is in the component specs. So what we have to come up with is a way for implementations to make some kind of claim, right? We can't say compatible with 4.0 necessarily, right? What we can do is come up with verbiage saying, what was that?
Support
Yeah,
4.0.
Yeah, I think we discussed that. That's a good point, Rudy. That we talked about before. We support 4.0 and we're compatible with all the component specs or something like that, right? Because that's provable. And then after 4.0, that's where we got to work on the branding, the compatibility, you know, to make sure that for a release after 4.0, we have a way for vendors to make more specific claims.
Okay.
Yeah, I think yeah, makes sense. If you sorry,
you go for it.
If you like passed all the TCKs included by the 4.0 other spec TCKs, yeah, you support for.
Yeah, because all the platform spec does really, well, there's two things I think it does. One is the platform spec points to all the other specs. And I'm having a mind blank. There's no TCK, but there is a top level BOM. Right? Those are kind of the two things that we release.
Yeah. So it's more aggregation of the specs that we release.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I think I will. Yeah. With this is looks very possible. We can release for this year.
Edwin, have you gotten your commit rights yet, or is that still in progress?
That's what I wanted to talk to you about later. That's
Okay. Yeah, no worries. All right. I don't know if we have anything else. The good news is my battery made the made the difference, made the distance. I mean, we've got 4 minutes left. I don't know if there's anything else that we wanted to talk about. Did we want to try and get mentors kind of committed while we're on the call? I think that's it from an agenda perspective.
Yeah, people can sign up like offline.
Okay. All right. So maybe what I'll do is I'll kind of wind down the call for everyone, go through my spiel, and then we'll meet again next week. So thanks everyone for joining the Microprofile Live Hangout. And I will see everyone in 1 week on the next call, same bat time, same bat channel, and keep your eyes on the working group, Microprofile working group email alias, and vote. Vote early, vote often. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.